I can tell you during my time in Congress, I had multiple trips to the southern border and was a part of the border caucus. And our guest here today has been and continues to be a leader. You've seen him on about every news outlet that there possibly is. Chad Wolf, of course, is the former acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We've been involved in lots of stuff together over the last several years. Currently, Chad serves as America First Policy Institute's Executive Director, Chief Strategy Officer, and the Chair for the Center for Homeland Security and Immigration. I don't know of anyone in the country who knows more of what's happening on our border than Chad Wolf, so let's give him a hand as we get started.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Secretary, let's start. I think I don't know that there is any greater issue that I hear about and issue of concern as to what's happening on our border. So why don't we begin with just giving us an overview. What is currently happening on our southern border and what's been happening in the last 4 years?
Well, it's good to be here with everyone. It's good to see all you great, good-looking folks out there today. Look, what's been going on over the last 4 years has been a historic crisis, particularly along that southern border, but we also now starting to see it along the northern border as well. And it's just a fundamentally different approach that the Biden-Harris team has taken towards that border. During my time serving President Trump, it was, look, we're going to empower our law enforcement officers to do their job, to enforce the law, to hold people accountable if they knowingly break the law. And we're going to disrupt the cartels. We're going to do all these different things that protect Americans and protect American communities first, right? America first. And it's the complete opposite that we've seen over these last 3.5 to 4 years, where you've put certain policies in place, right, that empower the cartels, that make them more powerful, to traffic more and more humans across that border, more illegal narcotics across that border, because they release them into American communities each and every day. It's what we call catch and release, right? You have Border Patrol officers catch someone, but then you have another part of the department release them into American communities. It's a very dangerous policy. We did away with it during the Trump administration, and they have brought that back really starting in 21. And I'll say that, you know, what we saw in early 21 is the first 100 days, you saw about 94 executive actions taken by the Biden and Harris administration that caused this crisis. Now, they have been in overdrive trying to explain that they didn't cause the crisis, that it was either Republicans or it was the weather cycles or it was all these other global migration, all these other, you know, concerns or reasons, but it's actually their actions that took it. And so you find yourself today, I think we've got a slide here that you can see, it may already be up, that talks about the level of the illegal apprehensions, the illegal encounters that we see. And so in that red box is the Biden-Harris timeline, right? Everything to the left of it would be President Trump, President Obama, and others. And so you see the illegal apprehensions and the encounters start to spike after they take office. And it's not because Congress passed any bill, because they didn't. It's because they took certain actions that incentivize people to come here. And so today, during 3.5 to 4 years, you have about 12 million folks illegally have come across that border. 10 million have been encountered. About 2 million are what we call gotaways. These are folks that don't come into contact with law enforcement, so we don't know who they are. We don't know why they wanted to come to the United States, and most importantly, we don't know where they are today. And this is only increasing time and time again. So, as I like to say, we're in a self-imposed crisis. This didn't need to occur. We had a different approach, and had they just not done anything, basically sat on their hands, we'd be in a lot better place than what we see today. And then you see stories every day about something else that has occurred because of policies that they've put in place.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I can testify as a member. I've been to all sectors of our southern border. I've been there during the Obama administration, been there when the Trump administration, in fact, at lowest point, I've been there, and the difference, and I've been there in the Biden administration, the difference is unbelievable what has happened. Like you said, this is a self-imposed, self-inflicted injury that we're creating. Can you give us any idea, and I don't know that anyone really knows, But what have we allowed into our country? Do we have any feel? I mean, we hear of hundreds of thousands of criminals and all this kind of stuff, but what feel do we really have as to who we've allowed in?
Well, we give you some context, and these numbers came out just a couple of weeks ago. The non-detained docket, which is just a fancy way of saying these are folks that have come across the border, that we know who they are, but they're not in custody, right? So they're not detained, non-detained. And we know that there's about 435,000 of them that are illegal aliens with criminal convictions that are in American communities today. And they're all eligible to be deported. They're all eligible to be removed. But this administration, while you see these numbers here, there's a screen down here that I can see as well. While you see these numbers, or you see the highest number of illegal aliens coming across that border, the highest number of illegal alien population that we have in the United States, and we'll go to the next slide, you also see the lowest number of removals from this administration. These are deportations. These are, let's get the bad people out of the country because they don't have a legal right to be here. And so when you put those two together, you start to get a picture of what's going on here, and you're saying, this isn't right. This isn't how the system's supposed to function, right? We're supposed to keep bad people out, and when we do find them, when they do commit a criminal act here in the United States, let's remove them from the country because they're not supposed to be here to begin with. But then you see numbers like this and you're saying, well, what's going on? And what I can tell you is that whether the previous slide, those numbers or these numbers, this is all by design. This isn't because they're incompetent. This isn't because they're bad at their job. This isn't because, weather patterns, what they will tell you. This is because they have put a plan in place from day one and they continue to execute on that plan. And you don't have to believe me. You just listen to Secretary Mayorkas, who says we're executing on our plan. And this is their plan. This is what they envision for a variety of different reasons. I think it's completely wrong. I think the vast majority of Americans believe it's wrong. And I think most Americans just want to see the chaos along that southern border go away. They want some fairness back. They want people held accountable for taking illegal actions and breaking the law. And you're just not going to see it, unfortunately, hopefully until January of 25.
Yes, and hopefully January 25 we'll see some drastic changes in this and multiple other areas. But let's talk about the why. When this is, as you say, a strategic plan that is being executed, we are seeing so much criminal activity, trafficking, drugs, as we all know. People ask me all the time, why? Is it a matter of trying to influence this upcoming election? Is there more behind it? What is the why behind all this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked a lot. There's a couple of different ways that you can answer that. I think most people say, well, they want them to vote for their party. I think there's some aspect to that. And you've seen a couple of Democratic congresswomen actually say that I need the illegal alien population in my district to be counted for reapportionment, right? And she's saying the quiet part out loud. And I think it's really important to listen to them when they talk about this. But they also talk about a value set. And they've said it for 3 years now that they have designed an immigration system that comports with their values. And that sounds fine. Sounds okay. I can get on board with that. Except when you ask them the question, well, what are your values? Let's get down to the part there that's really, really important. And their values seem to be out of step with most Americans, right? The value is anyone and everyone should be able to come to the United States, full stop, right? So it's interesting, but it's not immigration law. And I don't think it's the way that we should administer our laws either, right? Anyone should be able to seek asylum here in the United States. And we may be the only country that people can seek asylum for, which is a crazy notion. There's a lot of safe other countries around the world that a lot of these illegal aliens actually travel through to get to the United States. Why aren't you seeking asylum there, right? They're forum shopping. They want to come here to the United States for other reasons, and they're using the asylum system to get there. And then what they will tell you is that when they get here, they shouldn't be removed, that it's okay, that under almost no circumstance, back to that chart, should they be removed from the United States. And so those three value sets, I think, are out of whack with the rest of Americans. I think most Americans would say, well, that's not right. Not anyone and everyone should be able to come here. We need to know who they are. Our asylum system doesn't need to be abused. And look, if they're dangerous or bad people, or they don't have a legal right to be here, then we should remove them from the country. Every other country does this around the world. They remove bad people and bad things from their country. If you've gone through the due process system and an immigration judge on 3 separate occasions says you don't have a legal right to be here, you don't qualify for any of our protections, you should be removed. There's 1.5 million people with a final order of removal today that have said, nope, you know what, I'm not going to listen to that immigration judge. I'm just going to stay here in the United States. And we're not removing them, right? So there's no deterrence in our immigration enforcement posture right now. And I think that needs to change because otherwise it's going to continue to be abused.
Yeah, and not only that, but you add to it the layer that we're paying so many services for them to stay here.
Well, sure.
And I mean, so it becomes a massive economic issue as well. So you mentioned the lack of enforcement of the law. That becomes yet another major issue as to why and how does this administration continue to have disregard for the law. We have laws to prevent all this from taking place, and yet there's no enforcement of that law. Why is that, and what can be done to cause the...
Yeah, it's a tough question because people say, well, we've got all these laws on the books. Why aren't they enforcing them? If they enforce it, we'd have some order of process along the border instead of chaos, what we see today. Unfortunately, particularly in the law enforcement community, there's an immense amount of discretion in enforcement law, right? It's why a police officer in your community doesn't arrest everyone who speeds. They only arrest certain ones, probably the ones that speed the highest, right? And so because they have limited amount of resources. And so what the Biden-Harris team are doing for the last 4 years is they're hiding behind that. They're saying, well, we can't do everything. So we're only going to pick and choose what we do. But the manner in which they pick and choose is having just a terrible effect. And the numbers that you see here are the result of that. When they say, as they did in 21, is we're going to do a 100-day moratorium on any removals from the country, even if you're a criminal alien. 100-day moratorium, right? That has a chilling effect over the next several years. Or when you say, if you want to remove someone who's not a public safety threat or a national security threat, you have to get 4 levels of sign-off inside of DHS to remove one individual, right? That's going to have a chilling effect over time. There's law enforcement officers that are like, I'm not dealing with that, right? I got other things to do. And so you got to empower law enforcement to get back there, to do their job. And I think they can do it. They can do it pretty well overall.
I want to come back to that, but before I do, I have one more question with it. One of the things that continually shocked me every time I went, in fact, I came to the point of being totally convinced that the cartels literally control every square inch of our southern border across every sector. And the amount of money that the cartels are making every week compared to what we budget to defend our borders is just... It's insane. We're outmanned, out-financed, out-equipped, it seems, in every sector. Can you address that and give some reality as to where we are there?
Yeah, it's an important point. I would say they control the majority of the border. They certainly have more money, but they have more weaponry than a Border Patrol official who's going to have a sidearm, perhaps a long gun, but not everyone does, right? And so this is what it comes back to, right? It comes back to the human trafficking that we've seen over these last 4 years and the slide before this where the numbers were spiking. And if you say that you're averaging somewhere between 150,000 to 200,000 folks coming across that border every month, and every one of those individuals, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, you're paying a cartel member anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000, depending on where you're coming from in the world, that's how much money they're making. It's millions and billions of dollars that they are making these last 4 years that we have never seen them make before. And so, of course, they're putting those proceeds of that illegal activity back into their enterprise, right? These are multinational organizations that are very complex in the trafficking and then the illegal narcotics that they're doing. And they're opening different lines of business almost every week. And the one thing that a big business, and many of you know this if you're in the private sector, you want reliability and you want some assurance that it's going to be business as usual week in and week out. That's how you build your business. And the Biden-Harris team has given them that assurance for the last 4 years. There's been hardly any new policies put in place. I would often get the question when I left the Trump administration, people would come up and they would say, well, your immigration policies during the 4 years of Trump, it looked chaotic. And I said, well, good. That's how we designed it, right? We're trying to stay one step ahead of the cartels. It takes them anywhere between 20 and 30 days when you put a new policy in place to adapt to it, to start to move around, to move to different locations on the border, or to find that loophole. And so we were constantly putting new policies in place to try to stay ahead of the bad guys. This administration is hardly doing any of that. And that's why you see these numbers coming across the border in such historic numbers, is because there's nothing to slow them down, right? The chart here that you see is the manner in which Border Patrol, or I should say DHS, is now counting their encounters. That bottom number, that 58,000, is from the month of July, I believe. Oh, no, sorry, August. And you would say, well, 58,000, that's pretty good. And this is what the administration says, is our encounters are going down. You may have heard it at the debate. He kind of slipped it in right at the end. He said, well, our encounters are the lowest since President Trump left office. Not true, right? Because they're only counting that blue box at the bottom, right? What they're not counting is the 63,000 individuals coming across that border through the CBP One app, right? It's an app, and you heard J.D. Vance talk, with Senator Vance talk about this. This is an app that anyone can get on, and you basically get a free ride right through a port of entry, 35 different ports of entry along that border. You can come right through the port of entry. You don't need to cross the border anymore, or the river. You can come right through the port of entry, or the 30,000 individuals that are paroled in under that categorical parole every single month. These are monthly numbers. Those are coming from 4 countries. Those are coming from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. These are individuals that are being flown in by the Biden and Harris team into American communities each and every month. They'll tell you they're vetted. I'm here to say they're not being vetted. In fact, you have a DHS IG report that says each one of these individuals that comes into the country has to be sponsored in by someone here in the United States. The IG found that you had the same individual, the same email and the same phone number sponsoring thousands of individuals, the same address sponsoring thousands of individuals, right? It's broken. They know it's broken, yet they continue to advocate for this program. I think they just issued a press release in the last 7 days that they talk about how great the program is. And I would disagree with that.
Yes, I would too. I remember one time just talking about the cartels. I was on the border with several other members of Congress, and we were 70 miles inside U.S. territory, pulled off the interstate to look at some paraphernalia, some places where some of the coyotes have been frequently coming through, and immediately 70 miles inside U.S. territory, the first things we were told was, the cartels right now are watching you.
Yeah.
And it was infuriating that we were that far inside. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Let me ask you this. The morale of our Border Patrol agents, what's the biggest need? How are they doing right now?
Well, it's tough. They've been in this crisis for 4 years. They don't see an end in sight. They haven't for a couple of years now. They want to be listened to. It was the one thing that we did, I thought we did very well in the Trump administration, is we listened to the men and women of the Border Patrol who live in those communities. They live in Del Rio, Laredo, Brownsville, McAllen, Yuma, San Diego. They know what to do to solve this issue. If you just listen to them and empower them, they can get the job done, and we certainly did that. They're being ignored today. They're being told not to talk to media. They're being told to hide their numbers. We had a former sector chief from the Border Patrol who's since retired in the last 6 months, testified on Capitol Hill saying, I wasn't allowed to report my SIA numbers. These are special interest aliens that get picked up every day along that border. These are aliens that aren't on a watch list per se, but they have travel patterns that are very similar to terrorists. They may come from Southeast Asia, but they go to Brazil first, then they go to Ecuador, then they go to Colombia, make their way through Central America until they show up at our border, and that's an odd way to get to the United States. And so we want to ask them questions, and he was told by the Biden administration, don't advertise that you're picking up that many SIAs. So it's very, very troubling. One thing we didn't hit on, I know we're running out of time, is the inhumane nature of this policy patchwork that the Biden-Harris team has put together. When you talk about the children, right, we're supposed to protect the most vulnerable out there. And when you encourage policies that encourage children to be trafficked across the border, 500,000 to date, that's, like the Rose Bowl, that's filling up the Rose Bowl 5 times with children who have no parent, no guardian, who are then released to sponsors here in the United States. And we know that the Biden-Harris team has lost about 330,000 of them in the immigration system. We don't know where they are. We don't know who we've released them to. We don't know where they are, right? And so you can imagine what they're going through at the moment. And so a lot of people say, well, You know, during the Trump administration, you know, you guys wanted to keep people out. You weren't very humane. You know, you didn't bring people in and care for them. And I would say that's the wrong approach because it encourages the carnage of what we see today, because on that journey north to that border, children, women are raped, are abused, and worse every single day. And that is what you need to stop. And you stop that by enforcing the law. You stop that by getting them protections if they need it closer to their home country and not having them make that very, very dangerous journey. But those that do qualify for U.S. protections under U.S. law, making sure we get them those protections early in the system and we don't make them wait 6 or 7 years. These are things that every American should agree on. But unfortunately, you see a policy over the last 4 years that does the exact opposite.
But it can turn around.
It can turn around, absolutely.
Let's give a great round of applause to Secretary Chad Wolf. Thank you very much.
Thank you.